If your advisors aren't stepping up, if your team isn't stepping up, it's not their fault. It's yours. And if you don't fix this, they'll either keep relying on you for everything or they'll leave. And why does this happen? And more importantly, how do you fix it? Stick with me because by the end of this video, you'll have the 4-stage leadership mastery framework to turn your team, your advisors, into leaders fast. You know, a few weeks ago, I met with a firm owner who told me, Dominique, my team just won't take initiative. I have to sign off on every decision and I feel like I'm babysitting them. And guess what? His problem wasn't his team, as you might have thought already from this title. It was that his vision and his process was unclear to the team. Remember, process trumps people. He had no structured way to develop leaders, so they defaulted to waiting for his approval on just about everything. Does that sound familiar to you? Well, what I'm going to hope to do in the next few minutes is kind of show you exactly how you can change that situation with this 4-part framework that we're about to discuss, okay? So the first thing you need to understand is your team will be in this stage of what I call ignorance, which is they don't know what they don't know. This is where everybody starts. You and I started here, whether you're talking about starting in the financial services industry or we're talking about starting your firm. Either way, your team, your advisors, they are flying in the blind. And why are they flying in the blind? It's not necessarily because they don't know how to be, or they don't know how to give financial advice. They don't know how to create financial plans. They don't know how to put data in. That's not what we're really talking about. That could be a training issue. That's for another video. But what we're really talking about is they don't know vision. They don't know your vision. They don't know your expectations. They don't even know pretty much what leadership is going to look like when they become leaders. All this still has to be communicated by you. So your job is to make expectations crystal clear. That's why they're in a phase of ignorance. It's not ignorance of how to do the job per se. It's ignorance about how do I contribute to this culture, this environment, this organization? How do I become a leader here? And the only way they're going to know that is through what you communicate to them about your vision, about your process, about your mission, about your purpose, all those things. So, my takeaway for all leaders that recognize their team is at this stage is to assume that your team does not understand your expectations. Assume that your team does not understand your expectations, and therefore, you need to give them to them. You need to communicate them early and often. So much so it's going to sound like you're going to sound like a broken record to yourself and probably to them. But you're going to have to be really clear at expectations. Now, let me give you an example of something I heard, something that I heard a long time ago that I've implemented in my leadership and development of teams with firms is the following. Get your team to a point that you can say, after 90 days, day 91, let's call it, on the job, I expect that you should know A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, right? And after you have successfully demonstrated you know those particular things, this is what it looks like for the next 90 days or 180 days, whatever your interval is. And if you do that thing particularly, if you show and demonstrate that you know these particular deals or things at the end of the 90 or 180 days, whatever the period is, then you can expect this from me or from the firm or from the rest of the team. And what you need to do is you need to outline what that looks like. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves with the career development path, but the point is, the clearer you are about expectations, what you will realize is that your team will move out of ignorance, this stage of ignorance, faster. All right. So assume that your team does not know your expectations. Number two, the stage two is knowledge. They know, but they haven't become owners yet. They don't own it yet. What do I mean by that? Well, in this stage, they're going to be in discovery mode in a lot of instances. Discovering what? Discovering what type of advisor are they? Are they more connector? Are they more rainmaker? Are they more technician? Are they more architect? There's just so many different types. There's 6 advisor types, advisor archetypes that we could go through, but that's the stage for another video. Leave a comment down below if you want to talk about that. So this discovery phase means that they're learning. They're learning about themselves. They're learning about their strengths. They're learning about their weaknesses. They're learning about you. So you have to take you have to take some ownership here. But this is how you do it. When you allow them to discover, you might use tools like firm or team retreats or personality assessments or team outings. All these type of things that's going to promote discovery of themselves so that they can understand more about really what we're pointing to is their value to your organization. More about that later. Okay. So the big takeaway here, the big aha that I want for you leaders to have is you have to assume that your team does not understand their potential. They don't understand their full potential. They can't, because you, probably having done it a lot longer and at a higher level than them, see in them things that they probably can't see in themselves. So you need to be ready to coach them to the next level. That's the takeaway. Since they can't see their full potential and you need to assume that they don't understand their full potential, you need to be ready to step in as coach for them to take them to the next level. Okay. Number 3, understanding. Now, this is kind of tricky because at this stage, they can do it, but their confidence is still a little shaky, right? They want a little bit of over their shoulder, right? They want that because as they move from ignorance to knowledge to understanding, that does not mean understanding everything, right? It's not like how the sausage is made necessarily. However, they will begin to start to take some of the what's that we gather and accumulate in the stage of knowledge. Let's say, for instance, they're going through the CFP program and that curriculum, and they're learning a lot about the 7 steps of the financial planning process. It used to be 6, now it's 7. It will probably expand from that. But the point is, they're getting all these different inputs that they don't know where to put. They don't know necessarily the hows and the whys, or even sometimes the wins behind all these whats. You get where I'm going with this? And so it's your job there, mainly to be patient, because this is going to require a lot of patience. I remember when I was raising my kids and they got to that stage, and if you're a parent out there, or even if you remember when you were a kid, you probably don't remember when you were a kid, but there was a stage when my kids, after having been shown something like 1 or 2 times, they want to do it themselves. So they'd be like, Daddy, I want to do it myself. I'm going to do it myself. And it's like, okay. And your team, your advisors, they're saying, I want to do it myself. However, can they do it themselves? Probably not. But you got to let them learn. You have to let them learn. This is a really big part of their learning And although it's going to seem like you are contributing to, or not contributing, that's the wrong word, perpetuating the negative ROI cycle that we've talked about. And in essence, you are. But what's the alternative? How else will they learn? Unless you kind of take your hands off the steering wheel a little bit and let them steer themselves and maybe a little, bump into something a little bit. That might happen. You got to let them make mistakes here, because this is the only way that they will discover this term I like, their conscious competence. It's this idea of they're aware of what they're doing, right? Instead of being unsure about what they're doing, they're building confidence in what they're doing so that you won't have to look over their shoulder all the time. So this is really, really key to allow your team to get to the next level. And this is, I'm telling you, when I work with leaders and firm owners, this is by far the most difficult part for them because it requires so much patience, and it really reflects what's inside the owner, with the firm owner and the founder, about themselves more than it reveals more about the team. So assume, from a leadership standpoint, that your team does not understand their strengths and weaknesses. They do not get all of what it means to be strong at this or to be weak at this, and having confidence in those areas. That is not so much there in their minds yet. And therefore, you're going to have to give them margin. You're going to have to exhibit patience to allow them to discover it. Okay? Hopefully this is helping you guys. Now, last stage that everybody wants to get to, mastery or wisdom, which is they execute without needing you. They execute without needing you. Now, this is, look, I get it. We all want to get here. However, before someone gets to executing at their highest level of current ability, before someone gets to executing at this really high level of their current ability, not of their potential. I chose my words really carefully there. They're not executing at the highest level of their potential, because you would hope that ceiling is constantly rising. However, having them execute at their highest level of current ability, you're going to see these glimpses of genius, right? They're going to be doing things. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, that was brilliant there. Like, well, how did you come up with that? Right? You're going to see that as they move towards what I would call this. It's how they execute effortlessly without the use of conscious resources. It's this unconscious competence. It's where their confidence is kicked in. It's flow. It's like what Jordan used to call flow, right? Where the basket used to seem like this big old bucket, and every shot he threw up was going in. Like, you want people to get there, and they won't execute on that perfectly. Let me give you an example of this. So I used to work for a RIA from 2010 to 2016. And I remember the firm owner coaching me after a call he heard. This happened with several calls, but I'm just giving an example of one call. And he heard how I took a would-be disgruntled client relationship that really would have fallen into his lap to have to handle, and how I talked them down, or off the ledge, if you will, right? And what he did, of all the things he could have done, when he heard, or when we were kind of doing the, let's call it the postmortem of that call, what he honed in on is strengthening me and encouraging me in this particular way. Hey, I heard how you de-escalated the call, and how you handled this particular objection, and how you went through this. Great job on that. That was more important than highlighting all the things I may have done wrong or any of that kind of stuff. And so this is a key to leaders. When you have a team member that is showing progress and growth, you want to call out the things that they're doing well. You want to call them up to the next level, right? Watch calling out the behavior you don't want. Sometimes you do have to do that. This is a fine line. I'm not going to say there's a perfect science to this, but in your ability to take them to, or help them reach the next level, you got to be really, really keen at making sure you're calling up their behaviors. Now, why is this so key? It's not only key for that team member or that particular advisor that you want to help them reach their full potential and continue to raise that ceiling, is this also will point to the type of culture you are building inside the firm. Meaning that if you're always calling them out, the negative and all this other kind of stuff, when they train someone or they're leaders over someone else, what are they going to do? They're going to call out the bad behaviors. They're not going to call them up to the next level. They're not going to encourage all the good stuff and say, hey, I saw all this kind of stuff, and giving them more confidence to get to the next level. They're not going to do that with other team members. And so effectively, you are not duplicating yourself, and you're going to have more work than you anticipated having, because you have not practiced that. So I think this all points to this kind of penultimate idea or this pinnacle idea that assume that your team does not understand their value to your organization, and it's your job to call them up to the level of value you want them to have. Let me say that again. Assume that your team does not understand their level of value to the organization. You're going to be seeing things that bring value to the organization through them, and you're going to call out that behavior, call them up. You're going to encourage that behavior because essentially, not only will it benefit them, it's going to benefit you. It's going to create more enterprise value in your firm because what they're going to do is they're going to duplicate that behavior because that's the culture of what you're creating there. Okay? So I think the important thing is you have to recognize this value and you have to continue to hone this. Now, I teach this leadership framework inside my Advisor Growth Accelerator, where I help firm owners turn advisors into decision makers. So you're not stuck micromanaging every move that your team makes. If you're serious about building a self-sufficient team, click the link below in the bio or the description, and let's build your firm's leadership pipeline together. Here's the catch though. I can only take a few clients per month, so grab your spot before they're gone. So even if you're building leaders with this framework, there's one problem that will make them leave anyway, regardless of your greatest efforts. If your firm doesn't have a clear career development path, your best talent will start looking elsewhere. That's why in the next video, I'm going to show you how to build a career map that keeps talent loyal to you and attracts the best advisors to your firm. So click over here or there to watch it right now, and I'll see you in the next video.